Welcome to Downshift, everyone. My name is Paulo.
And my name is Matt, and we've spent the week with the facelifted Alfa Romeo Stelvio Quadrifoglio. And it competes against something we tested last summer, the Macan GTS from Porsche. So today we're going to see just how it stacks up to its main rival with the best and the rest. And we're going to start with the con side of the video. We're going to talk about the technology. Now, we just did a review on the facelifted Stelvio, so a lot of this stuff is going to be what you saw in that video. But you don't have a head-up display. In a performance car, especially a Quadrifoglio, I might want to see that. But this is one of the new things for 2024. You've got the fully digital instrument cluster. This is like what we saw in the new Tonale. So this is fantastic. The black levels are great. The customizability is pretty good. And it gives you a bit of drama, especially as you go into race mode. But it's when you come over here into your main screen here. This is touchscreen, but you also have a little iDrive controller down here. The controller is pretty quick, as you can see. But if you use the touchscreen, it's not like it's connected to my phone, so it's lagging or anything. It's just this is how laggy it is. I'm sorry about it, but you do have performance pages out here, so you can see a load of different stuff, active telemetry, and that sort of thing. You throw it into reverse, you do have a reverse camera, but not a 360 camera. Again, this is an almost $95,000 car as tested. I probably want to see a 360 camera, but I imagine that's coming for the facelift or the new generation.
You do have parking sensors, obviously 360, and it's important to realize when those are going off.
And it does show you the little hood gills that you have. So it's just, this graphic is programmed for the Quadrifoglio. The other thing that's a little bit annoying is you have wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Again, it's 2020. This isn't a huge deal. This is more of a nitpick than anything, but the technology is just a little bit lagging behind when we compare it to something like the Macan. And then there's the cabin experience kind of overall. Now, there's some improvements that they've made that I really, really like. Like for one, this exposed weave carbon fiber is amazing. It gives this a sense of specialness and uniqueness, but the Porsche, the Macan interior is obviously going to be a bit nicer, a bit more modern, but here you've got a great, nice black interior with the exposed carbon, red stitching. You've got the clover here, carbon on your steering wheel with the red start-stop button, the huge paddles. It's just those tiny little luxuries that you're going to get maybe in the Porsche that you're not going to get here. We have heated seats here. We don't have cooled. We do have a heated steering wheel, though. We've got 3-level memory, which is actually pretty good. We've got the little Italian flag detail on your center console. You've got a wireless charger. You've got your DNA dial, which is a little bit more unique than like a traditional sports mode dial. And you've got race mode. So there is some flair, there is some uniqueness, and it's very much tailored to, if it can't be the upper echelon of luxury and quality, it gives you some of that emotion and some of that Alfa Romeo-ness that you probably want. And we're gonna start the positive side of the video under the hood here, and we gotta talk about this engine. Now, you've probably heard it a million times since this car's come out in like 2018 or whatever it is. This is a 2.9 liter turbocharged V6. It's a Ferrari-derived engine. So they basically took Ferrari V8, lopped 2 cylinders off of it, added 2 turbos, 505 horsepower, 443 pound-feet of torque, all going through an 8-speed, all going to all-wheel drive as standard with your Quadrifoglio. 0 to 60 is done in like the mid 3 seconds as reported. And you're gonna expect about, what, 19 mpg, but not if you drive, well, probably how you should drive this thing. But the funny thing is, when we compare it to the Macan, that is also a 2.9 twin turbocharged V6. But what power is the Macan making? Do you know?
434 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque.
But it's not gonna sound like this. And when we talk about the personality of this car, this is where it starts and ends with me. That sound with the ZF 8-speed auto, with the massive paddles, that upshift crack that you get here is 1000% why I would buy this car. You do get Q4 all-wheel drive as standard. You need to get all that power down to the ground. You do have adaptive suspension, of course. You can stiffen it up and soften it back depending on what mode you're in. It's pretty nice. We've also got a carbon fiber drive shaft. Yes, name another car that has that. There's actually probably a couple. But you have a mechanical LSD versus, I think it was the E-LSD in the Competizione. It just feels really dynamic, especially when you get this thing around mid-corner, get a little bit of power into it, the turbo spools. It will feel nice and organic. It'll rotate a little bit. The steering is actually pretty good. You've got decent feel. It's got a decent heft to it. I do like the steering over something like a modern, I don't know, they don't make them anymore, but the X3M. It's a little bit firm, but it does have that feeling of it's on its toes, it's ready, and it's just crazy fast and crazy dynamic, and it's really fun. But let's say you want to tailor it back and just drive it normal. You switch it back into N mode or A mode, and the dampers soften back, the steering lightens up. It's pretty dailyable. The ride is worlds better than an X3M was, and the Alfa is also about 100 pounds lighter than the Macan. So it's got a whole load of personality, and it's really fun behind the wheel. Another one of my favorite things about this car is just the way it looks, and it starts with this paint. This is Verde Montreal Metallic. It's like $2,200 option. This is worth every single penny. I wish every car in my life was this color. It looks incredible. It's a huge reason why I love this car. It looks amazing in midday sunlight. Probably the best car / color combo, maybe even the best color I've ever seen on a car. But moving past it, because you don't want to hear me talk about the green the entire time, it just does look very incredibly Italian. Now this is where the facelift stuff started to take place, and it mainly comes to fruition in the triple beam headlights. These are very new. The rest of it is pretty familiar. You've got a little bit body colored splitter down here, a little bit more accentuated Alfa beak, and then this is interesting. This is your radar detector over here, and I think in the non-Quadrifoglio it says Alfa Romeo here on the top. But you do have hood scoops up here because, of course, exotic supercar type things. But as we come around the side, we'll talk about wheels and tires, because these look very similar to what we had on the Competizione, but they're finished in like a satin gray. They're a little bit bigger, 20-inch wheels, and then we have these black Alfa Romeo brake rotors. I think they're 6-piston up front, 4-piston in the rear, 225s up here, Pirelli P0s, 285s in the back. Incredible. We do have body colored wheel arches here, and of course your 4-leaf clover for your Quadrifoglio right here. You do have black side skirt, black wing mirror, black window treatments, touch sensitive lock unlock on the front, not on the rear, but the profile looks very Alfa. It's got kind of a hanging out butt back here, but you can just see the paint. And then this, I know you're gonna like this.
Yes.
Take a look at that.
Love me a nice fender flare.
So that is pretty good. It does seem pretty squat. I do think we could lower it another inch or two, get rid of some of that wheel gap, but it does look really aggressive. You've got the classic kind of quad Alfa. Now they're not as offset as they once were when they first came out, or at least in the Giulia, but you've got an aggressive diffuser back here, Q4 all-wheel drive as standard. Just really, really good looking. What do you think?
Yeah, I mimic your thoughts around the paint. I think it's gorgeous. It's off the charts. I love the thick boy tires on here as well. The wheels are really beautiful as well with the brake calipers, especially in the back where you kind of have these.
They're 2-piece in the back.
Break up, yeah, 2-piece. I do agree with the wheel arch. I think you could probably lower it a little bit just to kind of remove some of that, but it is a gorgeous car with a gorgeous color.
The wheel gap is the only thing that I might ding the car on, but just in love. But then the almighty dollar, we're going to talk about price. Now, the Quadrifoglio for the Stelvio starts at $87,300-ish. Now, as tested, this has a little bit of kit on it, plus the paint, absolutely worth the $2,200 by the way. So as tested, we're at about $93,360. Now, compare the $87,300 where this thing starts to where a Macan GTS starts at about $89K. So it's close. It's almost Porsche money. But the Porsche is pretty sterile, pretty clinical, and this is going to give you a different emotional experience, for sure, and for less money. This is what happened in Colorado. We literally filmed the Stelvio under the flight path.
Memes.
And we are going to talk about trunk space and cargo practicality. Now you'll remember in the normal Stelvio video we compared it to things like the X3, the GLC, and the Q5, and this thing got dinged because it was smaller than all those, but in the Quadrifoglio it competes more directly with the Macan. So we've got 18.5 cubic feet of space. That is going to be more than the Macan, and you can drop the seats from the trunk, which is an underrated feature. You've got some grocery bag hangers back here, privacy cover, and the seats fold 40-20-40, which is quite good. Got a tiny, tiny bit of storage underneath the floor here. And then when we fold the seats down, we're looking at about 56.5 cubic feet, which compares to the Macan how?
Yeah, the Macan is 17.3 with the seats up and 53 cubic feet with the seats down.
So this does have a little bit more practicality, a little bit more cargo space than the Macan, and that's why it's on the positive side of the video. As we start to talk about the rear seats, again, just like the trunk, it's just a hair bigger than the Macan, which gets it on the positive side of the video. It is going to be smaller than the other Germans, the BMWs, the Audis, the Mercedes, but for our comparison here, it is a bigger back seat, and to be honest, it's fairly practical. I mean, I've got a couple inches of knee room in front of me. I've moved it up a little bit because it automatically chauffeurs and gets itself out of the way, but I do have a decent amount of space, even with the pano roof. I would like a little bit more headroom, but it's not terrible. Panoramic roof, about $1,500 option. All black interior, I think it's the only option, or the only contrast you're gonna get. You do have some netted pockets back here, and you do have some vents back here and some heated seats with some USB-A's. Again, when this thing gets updated, we'll probably see USB-C's, maybe a climate zone, and maybe even some cooled rear seats. Might start to expect that as this thing approaches $100,000. But overall, it's a reasonably practical back seat, bigger than the Macan. Because I'm literally gonna set that as my alarm sound.
So you think it's better than the LC500?
Don't ask me hard questions like that. Oh! That's just the best thing about this car,
Yeah.
period.
Well, let's talk about the standout things for you.
Need a cigarette.
Overall, I feel like this car was very hit or miss for me.
Yes, it's peaks and valleys for sure.
Yeah, so some of the hits, the paint is beautiful.
Oh
it's
my
incredible,
God.
and it looks so good on this chassis, this platform.
Yes.
So I love that.
So good.
I love the brakes. The wheels are awesome. The brakes are incredible.
Yeah.
To
Yeah, you were
actually
texting
in
me
stopping power.
like a couple days. You're like, dude, the brakes are incredible.
Yes, it's extremely fast.
Yeah.
And when you drive it in race mode like this, I feel like it's just brilliant. Like it
Yes.
handles really well. The gearbox is great.
You can feel the back lighten up, so it'll rotate a little bit with power.
Right. It makes
good.
all the right noises.
Yes.
So those were kind of my hits. Would you add any other hits?
I think
that you had?
that's exactly it. My standout is that this is such a good emotional experience when we start to compare it against something like Germanic, against a BMW, against a Porsche, against something like that. Like, those are very proficient, those are very good at getting a thing done, but this moves me a little bit more with the sound and the way it rotates, and like the Porsche's a bit, we'll get to it, but yeah, what are your misses?
Yeah, so my misses, as I just...
Yes. It just doesn't get old.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's
okay,
so good.
So my misses were, and I know you agree because we've talked about this, but the tech stack is just, honestly, it's not there. You don't have a heads-up display. The screen is very laggy. It's very small. Your center infotainment screen.
Yeah. This car came out in like 2018-ish.
Yeah.
And they haven't updated the tech since then. And I think when it came out, even it was like kind of borderline.
Right, for that time. And I think the other misses is like the ambient lighting on the interior. I also don't think there's any lighting on the exterior that's like, for this price point, what I would expect, like any greeting lights, that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
you have it on your door.
Crazy animations or anything.
Yeah, you have it on your door handles in the front, but not in the rear. See, like, it
it to
takes
me
a
again.
while. I really want to actually launch this thing because I feel like it takes a second to get off of the... it takes a second to actually get moving when you put your foot down without a launch. Okay, so those are basically my misses. Any misses for you that I didn't have, besides the tech stack?
I think for me it's been really eye-opening to kind of go through the pros and cons in our process with the Quadrifoglio and the non-quad, because the non-quad, you could compare it to a Macan and a lot of the same things would be true, bigger trunk, bigger back seat, but I think until you get to the quad here, I'm leaning Porsche. But when you get to this, I can excuse the laggy tech. I can excuse a small back seat compared to like an X3 or something, because the drivetrain is so emotional. We kind of talked about it a little bit this week over text. Like, this kind of has the Wrangler 392 thing, where it takes something that's kind of old, not necessarily amazing, but you add such a characterful powertrain and driving experience that I look past all of it and I just love it.
Yeah. As you said that, I couldn't really focus on you because there's a rattle up here.
There has been an overhead rattle. It's right here. I know exactly where it is. If I hold this, it'll go away.
But how could you be mad when you hear that?
It's so good.
I totally see your points, and I think that it's all very valid reasons. I would say, though, I would personally get the GTS just because it's a bit more polished. I really enjoy the tech stack and like when you're not driving it how we're driving it now.
Yeah.
I like to have some of the more creature comforts, like better adapt or lane keep assist, that sort of thing, a heads-up display, a better infotainment system, like kind of the things that are just lacking here.
Yeah, look, it's, and we've had this conversation a number of times this week, but it really, for me, kind of comes down to like the Clarkson meme, where he's standing between the cars, pointing at the Porsche. This is brilliant. The Macan is brilliant. It is all around, objectively, a better car, but I like this.
Yeah.
I like this. I would buy this. And I would have nightmares and headaches way more than the Porsche, but I would love it. I really think I would love it, and I would have to get this color, because if you're going to get one of these, you have to get this color. It's just insane. It's not a sensible or logical decision. I don't think owning an Alfa Romeo ever is like a totally sensible thing. Then you go to the Germans. Yep. But this moves me in a way that the Macan doesn't.
No,
if that makes sense.
It pulls on the strings.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I think with that, thank you to Alfa Romeo for letting us have a go in both the Competizione and the Quadrifoglio. Thank you to you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.